have you seen the boatmen change over the years? What were the other people that were, just what kind of people who were running the river aside from you?
Well, in the old days, I told you there weren't many people running. You only had a couple of adventures that you never hardly seen, so you didn't have other boatmen as such. It's hard for you to think of a day when there just wasn't. They just didn't go. And it's hard for you to think now, but this was when they just didn't do these things. And then as they came in, and then the boatmen come in, they got, at first, till they got used to it, they were different. But I don't see that you get that much total change. You mainly get younger kids in now, more college, which you didn't have at all then. You didn't have at all at the younger. It was usually somebody that was a little bit more yet of a pioneer, a prospector, something like that liked to be out. And somebody that liked to be out more, usually about 25 to 30 years old, rather than in college. Yeah, usually then the start of most boatmen then were somewhere 25 to 35 rather than in the younger bracket. You didn't see as many young ones as you do now out of college. Like Western has practically all college kids.
Yeah.
Because they get them from that college.
And the passengers, what do you think they used to get out of the? You say they don't make passengers like they used to.
Well, in those days you went because they liked rapids. It was rough and it was tough. And your trips were long. They were all 18 days and there was no way out and there were no other boats and there weren't helicopters or anything like that. There wasn't anything. And so that you were out and totally dependent on surviving yourself and getting through. So many words on our boat, we were dependent on one another. And right there, that's what you're going to do and how you're going to get out. And it's up to you to get through anything, rocks or punctures or anything. And what you got is totally there, and that's it. And so you do have to improvise on different things and do things. It isn't like you can do now at all. And then you didn't have drinks or anything then either. There's no way you were hauling beer down or anything in those days because it was impossible. Too long, you didn't have the room, and you kept everything soft, so when you go through these rapids, they didn't hit nothing. You didn't have frames, and you wouldn't have had frames, because they can't take it. They don't bend, the boats don't give. The frames take away from the boats giving when it comes to really bending around really terrific rapids. And so that you didn't have the thing like frame. And my rowboats only had little wood mounts about that high for the oars to go into because you didn't want some big long thing sticking up there that could kill you if it hit you in the head if the boat turned over. So you actually set your boat up so that if it turned over on you, you'd be okay. You could hang on to it and you could turn it over and it wouldn't be that way. So you didn't have that iron or frame stuff. And I still, to this day, personally, don't like frames of any kind. I personally just don't like frames up where people are. See, my big boat doesn't have that. It's all soft. And so that I am not bothered this day. I could take that across the ocean, actually. I'm positive it'd go right across the ocean if you keep in gas. No problem. And I wouldn't be afraid of the storms or anything in that boat because it's one that can survive. Takes the people to hang on, though. You have to be able to hang on, and you have to have a heart for it. But it could be done. That's for sure.
Do you think the river teaches people anything? The passengers, even today?
Oh, yes, I think it's good for people today. Different things do occur because people, of course, really are so well spoiled today, even to almost anybody, and spoiled early. And I won't say spoiled because it's possibly good they have a good life, but still it's good for them to know a little bit about how things are when things don't go right. They have to learn that on the canyon that they can't do anything about anything, and it's a person themselves and not how much money they got or who they are. And it counts if they're with a regular group. If they come in so many words, everybody on my boat is the same no matter what they do in life. It doesn't matter to me what they do. So if you're the president of the ditch digger, I don't care. And nobody else cares either, not while you're out there. It's just how you get along and all this type of thing. and then getting along with each other and all that. And you do have the heat and cold, you can't predict things. So it's kind of good for them to get out, where they can't turn the button and have everything just so. Once in a while, it's good to wake them. Then they know they've been somewhere. If you just go and stay in good hotels and everything, you're not, when you get back, you really haven't did anything that different. To just go and stay in good hotels all the time, you just really haven't did anything that moves you out of your own world, and where they have problems and all that doesn't dig them. People used to come out, and that was the one good thing when you had so much rough water and the rapids, and then they would, at the end of the trip, they'd laugh and say, let's see, what was I worrying about so much? They couldn't even remember. It had gone so by the wayside. What they were worrying about wasn't really that important. It had just gone by the wayside. And so that's the thing. If you can make it, I like it a little rougher because it gets people away from their everyday life.
Do you think, do you see people change what they're doing in their everyday life after they do trips with you?
Certain people do a lot of times. There's a lot of people then find that, a lot of people then go on the river and they do change their way of living because they suddenly just decide that maybe why you need so much to get along, that it isn't everything just to earn so much all the time and to keep wanting to climb the ladder up no matter who they step on. So there are a lot that change. One boatman I have is a good example, and he was here last night, and he lives down in Phoenix now, and he had a real good job with an oil company. And he was in the upper bracket there of making really good money. And when I met him, he went on the river, and then he got to liking the river so well. And so then he had a really big boat, and he had the best condominium and all kind of things in there, a real classy car and in the van. And but he still had to get down to this place where he went to work, even though he made this terrific salary, and had to drive the traffic and everything down in L.A. and all this. And it still took him a long time to get his boat out into the harbor and all them things, no matter how good he was doing. And so as he went on the river, he happened to be one that happens to be more to the pioneer type. And he just loved it, and he loved just that little bit of ruggedness type. And so then he decided that he wanted to change jobs. Somehow he wanted to get out from Los Angeles, and he didn't want to drive for an hour and a half. And then he said he couldn't enjoy anything he had because he said, well, sure, he had owned this good condominium, but what was it? If you come home, what do you do besides, eat and go to bed? You can either eat there or eat out and go to, and the average day life, talk, summer, drink, and that's it. And then he said on a weekend, again, he got the boat out, and then through the traffic and all, and then got out in the heavy traffic, even out on the ocean, and did anything. And then again, he got back that he really hadn't did very much, that he'd spent most of his time getting there and back again. And then he couldn't drive a van or anything to work. There was no parking. He had to drive this fancy little car. So he had to have one that had the trailer hookup and all for the boat, and then the other one to get down there. So then he had to have this expense, which he didn't use that much on the one, which he did hardly only a week. And so he decided, I'm getting older, he said, and I'm not doing what I want to do. And he said, so he said, I can stay here and get this terrific retirement, but I won't need it because I'll probably be all washed up, because within himself he was getting so irritated. And he didn't have enough to do. There wasn't that work. He appeared, but he just didn't really do nothing, he said. And so then he, believed it or not, quit this job. He got me to promise he could come all summer. And he quit this job, and this is when we rode the little boats, and he quit that job and come out here all summer. Then he decided he wouldn't go back to L.A., and then he looked around, and then he got down at Phoenix, but he didn't want back in, and of course he found he couldn't get into that same type of job, being older, that he had quit so easy, but he didn't want back in it. And then he he has his own employment office. He is what they call a headhunter, for the high executives, that is, because he knows that line, of course, being one. And so then it's come out good enough, though, that he has somebody working for him and can still go 3 trips a year. And then he met this girl, which was real good, this woman, I should say, because they're up to, and she had had this kind of place just barely out from Phoenix on the edge where they have horses and everything. And so they live out there. And so then that he doesn't have to push it hard. So then they can go horseback riding and have the longer weekends and take their mountain bikes and go and go on smaller rivers. And so he looks good. His attitude has changed. He was so bossy. He'd been used to having these people under him, all these people. And I used to tell him on the river, you can't do that. You're not a boss out here. Everybody's the same, and we follow the rules. But one person doesn't take over and just go like this. You don't do it.
Yeah.
And so I had to get him over being that way. But he's got over it, and he lives with this woman. He isn't really married, but they get along great, and she wants it that way. He'd like to get married, but she doesn't want to. And but he has a good lifestyle and loves it and says he does. And he feels good and he looks good, and he gets a lot of time, a whole boatload of people for me of his own from Phoenix, because he likes to show a film or pictures or video or something. And so he's one, for instance, that changed his whole lifestyle in a hurry.
Yeah. How are we doing? Should we pop in another tape?
Yeah.
Or how are you doing?
Teresa changed her lifestyle. Her and her hubby were working in town, and they went with me to begin with when they weren't used to rivers.
I got another minute.
Okay.
They weren't used to rivers, and she went with me, and then we liked her so well. And so it really changed her in a hurry to where she more and more wanted to go on the river rather than being the one that worked so much inside. Because she did most of the work. Then they were married, they had their own business, but she was doing the percentage. And while she could do it, she found that she really wanted to be on the river and hoped that she could do something. And so that's when she just made up her mind she would get out and work on the river. And then she got into the Eagle Watch program. At first she's a volunteer, and now she, of course, is into where they do give her something, not much, but it gets her by.
You've sure started a lot of people.
And so a lot of people like that, a lot of people change their lifestyle. Some people love the river. They really don't belong anyway in their lifestyle they're in. And so they naturally, then when they see that there's a possibility of change and do. And then others who don't, who belong just where they're at, then they don't. Okay. And so that's the difference. But those who have that feeling change